It's Tuesday, March 21. In the headlines, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics boost for a number of high schools with a provision of 110,000 laptops. In business news, Beretta Investments to be delisted from JSE. Regionally, in Belize, 62 women police officers promoted. Internationally, Russia's President Vladimir Putin to discuss Ukraine peace plan with China's president in Moscow. In sports news, 2 Jamaicans nominated for CONCACAF 2022 Player of the Year awards. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. A total of 173 secondary level institutions across the island will be provided with 10,000 laptops valued at $4.3 million to outfit their computer laboratories. The initiative is being undertaken by eLearning Jamaica Company Limited. The devices will assist students in preparing for the Caribbean Secondary Education Certificate and Caribbean Advanced Proficiency Examination, CAPE, and also help in developing skills in the areas of technology, science, engineering, arts, and mathematics. Maya Chung reports.
Beneficiary institutions are those that would have received desktops under a project which started in 2006 to equip high schools with computer labs and devices. Many of the desktops provided are now obsolete, and ELJAM is replacing them with laptops. Holy Trinity High became the first institution to receive devices with the official handover of the first 30 of 68 laptops at the school in Kingston recently. The other 38 laptops, which will be presented to the school shortly, will outfit a second lab that is being retrofitted and a half-room computer lab. Minister of Education and Youth Favour Williams, in her remarks at the handover ceremony, said the ministry is committed to providing adequate resources to improve student academic outcomes. She pointed out that coinciding with the laptop donation is the provision of 500,000 Microsoft Office 365 licenses to students and educators in public schools. The license will allow students to access Microsoft productivity tools, including Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Teams, OneNote, and OneDrive. Chief Executive Officer of ELJAM, Andrew Lee, informed that over the last 3 years, the entity has delivered 150,000 technology devices to the most vulnerable students across the island. He noted that work will continue to help prepare Jamaica's young people to adapt effectively to a changing world largely dependent on technology. For the news on PBC Jamaica, I am Maya Chung.
More than 7,000 residents in and around Watermount area of St. Catherine now have access to potable water because the Watermount water supply system has been upgraded. Areas like Back Pasture, Cudgers Hill, Old Works, Watermount, Barry, and Pedro are benefiting from the system that was developed by the Rural Water Supply Limited, RWSL. Minister of Local Government and Rural Development Desmond McKenzie was present at the commissioning ceremony.
I want to, therefore, thank you for your patience, because if we're talking about from the days of Dr. Barr coming in and others before Dr. Barr, it means that your perseverance has been strong and your patience longer than Job. But we are finally here, and I want to beg of you to accept this as an investment of your tax dollar.
The St. Catherine Municipal Corporation, which will now operate the system, had initiated work on the project. Member of Parliament for St. Catherine West Central, Dr. Christopher Tufton, praised the successful collaboration.
That involves a series, a network of over 3 kilometers of piping, a number of storage tanks, pumps that are right here on site visibly, moving water from one system, natural system, river, through to processing it, purifying it, storing it, and of course taking it into your homes.
The upgraded system comes at a price tag of $220 million. Over the last few years, mental health issues were multiplied by forced quarantine to combat COVID-19, applied by nationwide lockdowns, and can produce acute panic, anxiety, obsessive behaviors, hoarding, paranoia, and depression, as well as post-traumatic stress disorder in the long run. Here's a look at how the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, has been observing and actively giving aid to member countries to combat this. Remember, Jamaica is a member.
The COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated many problems across the Caribbean region, one of them being the lack of access to mental health services. Recognizing this, the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, set out on a mission to strengthen mental health and psychosocial response to COVID and other crises in 3 Caribbean nations, including Suriname.
When your mental health is at stake, that a lot of things also can go wrong.
And unfortunately, this led to a shocking number of suicides in the country.
In that period, we had an increase of suicide cases in Nigeria. So when we were there, I think every day we were there 3 to 4 days, and every day that we were there was a case.
And through the PAHO-led project, the Bureau of Public Health in the Ministry of Health in Suriname engaged the public through trainings and outreach programs to address the far-reaching effects of mental health.
In the period of COVID, mental health was not forgotten, and that a lot of activities were done. For instance, we made sure that some people got some information, so awareness in our population about mental health. We held some panel discussions, for instance. 4 panel discussions were held. We also had a radio program for elderly with 2 doctors who made it possible that the people could call and ask some questions. The same thing was done with the panel discussion. We had training, basic psychosocial skills. We had a launch of 2 trainings from the PAHO, who we asked the PAHO to translate these trainings for us. So it was psychological first aid and suicide prevention training.
And these trainings and information sharing sessions were successful, very much welcome and impactful.
The project was very successful because we had a lot of different aspects to this project. They were very happy with us bringing them this training. So I was very happy that the PAHO had given us the chance to also bring their training all the way there to the people. There are a lot of people who are willing to learn. They are willing to learn what the key points are in seeing the signs for suicide prevention, so we can prevent this, because every suicide is one too many.
Time now for the business report with Danita Rodney.
Barita Investments will be delisting from the Jamaica Stock Exchange. This news comes after the Bank of Jamaica gave the green light for Cornerstone United Holdings Jamaica to restructure the Cornerstone group of companies, of which Barita is a member. Under the proposed new structure, Barita's shares will be delisted, merged into Cornerstone, and shares of Cornerstone Financial Holdings Limited will be listed in its place. At the end of the process, Cornerstone United Holdings Jamaica will become the direct parent of Barita. Now for your market updates. In foreign exchange trading for Monday, March 20, the US dollar sold for an average of $151.81. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $111.05. The pound sterling traded for $184.64, and the euro sold for $164.16. In GSE trading, the GSE index declined by 2,021 points. The junior market index declined by 31 points. The combined market index declined by 2,178 points, and the All Jamaican Composite Index declined by 3,422 points. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 124 stocks, of which 32 advanced, 49 declined, and 43 traded firm. Stocks advanced for AMT Packaging and Paper Company Limited, Barita Investments Limited, and Caribbean Assurance Brokers Limited. Stocks declined for 13E Student Living Jamaica Limited, 13E Student Living Jamaica Limited Variable Preference, and Blue Power Group Limited. Trading firm were Virgin Paints Jamaica Limited, Caribbean Producers Jamaica Limited, and Carreras Limited. The overall volume leaders were Wigton Wind Farm Limited Ordinary Shares with over 3 million units, Sagicor Select Funds Limited Financial with over 2 million units, and Jamaica Stock Exchange with over 1 million units. In regional stocks, in Trinidad and Tobago, Calypso Macro Index Fund was the only active security posting a volume of 150 shares. Zero securities traded on the Barbados Stock Exchange. In regional business, the International Monetary Fund notes that Trinidad and Tobago's economy is on a road to recovery. However, it expects the country's fiscal position to swing from surplus in financial year 2022 to a deficit in 2023. Peter Christopher tells us more.
In the IMF's concluding statement of the 2023 mission to Trinidad and Tobago, the IMF notes that unexpected high energy prices led to a surplus for fiscal year 2022. But in fiscal 2023, a deficit is expected, followed by a series of moderate deficits over the medium term. The IMF has also hailed the country's management of its exchange rate, namely the maintenance of the repo rate at 3.5 since March 2020, which it says has supported the recovery of the economy. However, the IMF says an adjustment to the policy rate should be seriously considered to contain inflationary pressures and narrow the negative interest rate differentials with the U.S. monetary policy rate. This, the IMF says, would also help mitigate potential risks of capital outflows and reduce incentives for excessive risk-taking that could threaten financial stability. Finance Minister Colin Mimbert says the IMF's overall positive outlook for Trinidad and Tobago is notable given the complicated international economic context. In a statement put out by the Ministry of Finance, Minister Imbert says the IMF's acknowledgement of the prudent, resilient and medium-term orientation of our fiscal policy is indeed gratifying, coming as it does after the multiple shocks faced by Trinidad and Tobago and the world economy over the last 3 years. Peter Christopher, CNC3 News.
In international business, investors stepped cautiously into bank stocks, emboldened by the rescue of Credit Suisse, with share prices tentatively rising in Europe and Asia amid lingering concerns.
There was some relief for stock investors on Tuesday. Shares rose around the world as fears of a banking crisis eased, for now at least. After gains for most of Asia, Europe then opened in the green. The region's Stock 600 index was up over 1% in early trade. Bank shares jumped around 3%. The gains come after the weekend rescue of troubled Swiss bank Credit Suisse by local rival UBS. Investors have also welcomed rapid moves by central banks to provide lenders with extra liquidity. Policymakers, including ECB Chief Christine Lagarde, have this week stressed that this isn't a repeat of the 2008 global financial crisis.
The euro area banking sector is resilient, with strong capital and liquidity positions.
However, the worries have far from ended. The focus now is on smaller US banks, including First Republic. Its shares halved in value on Monday amid concerns that an earlier $30 billion lifeline wouldn't be enough. JP Morgan boss Jamie Dimon is reported to be leading talks with other big banks on how to stabilise First Republic. Now the focus turns to a 2-day policy meeting by the US Federal Reserve, which starts Tuesday. Policymakers there will have to decide whether to press ahead with rate hikes, which many see as a factor in the recent turmoil.
In market data for oil rose, extending a recovery from a 15-month low as the rescue of Credit Suisse eased worries about global banking sector risk that could hit economic growth and reduce fuel demand. Brent crude was up 46 cents at $74.25 per barrel, and West Texas Intermediate crude gained 15 cents to $67.79. And that was the business report on PBCJ. I'm Danita Rodney.
In regional news, Trinidad and Tobago has a new president. On Monday, newly elected President Christine Kangaloo says she will continue the work started by her predecessors to demystify the role of the president. After taking the oath of office, President Kangaloo said her goal is to modernize the office and make it more accessible to the public. Mahala Joseph Wharton has more.
President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago Christine Kangaloo used the words of local entertainer Melanie Hudson to bring assurance to those that are yet to sign on to the idea of her presidency.
I will always be there for you, no matter what you do, whatever joy or pain that you are going through.
She pledged to work with and to respect all citizens, especially those who might not yet wish to work with her. President Kangaloo also expressed that she is ready to share the official residence with the public.
One of the ways in which I would like to see the office of president made more and more accessible is by having its facilities put to even greater use in hosting cultural, educational, and artistic ventures, particularly among the youth.
She said she would like to see the bandstand put to regular use as a platform for new and emerging young artists.
I would like to see the main ballroom and the grounds at President's House used to host displays such as art exhibitions by primary and secondary school students. And I would like to see the public areas at President's House opened up to facilitate endeavors such as book club meetings and programs to introduce young people to music.
President Kangaloo also shared plans to put together an archive of this country's presidential history.
Such an archive is badly needed. Without it, I have had to rely on the willingness, the patience, and the generosity of volunteers, both in and outside of the office of the president, to work out what to expect, both in the lead up to today's inauguration and thereafter during the term of office that lies ahead.
President Kangaloo said it is important for the office to develop its own recorded documented history and practices, not only for future presidents, but for the entire nation to benefit. Mahala Joseph Wharton, TDT News.
In Antigua, Prime Minister Gaston Brown says former LIAT workers could receive their full severance if all the shareholder governments agree to share the financial obligation. The head of government has also compared the severance offer his government has made with the commitment recently made by Barbados' Prime Minister, Mia Mottley. Prime Minister Brown was speaking at the weekend on the Brown and Brown Show on Point FM. Helisha Humphreys reports.
Prime Minister, the Honourable Gaston Brown, says the government of Antigua and Barbuda is still waiting to take responsibility for 50% of the monies owed to the former LIAT workers. Prime Minister Brown explains the offer made by his Barbadian colleague Mia Mottley applies only to Barbadians. He says the offer made by the government of Antigua and Barbuda is superior since Barbados' offer would amount to about $10 million and about 10% of the overall liability. He also reminds Barbados held 52% of the shares of LIAT 1974.
Our offer was a broad offer to the staff of LIAT, even those in different jurisdictions. And again, in keeping with the spirit of the Treaty of Chaguaramas.
Prime Minister Brown says, though the former shareholder governments have no legal liability to pay LIAT severance, moral responsibility and the spirit of CARICOM brotherhood should be a guide.
There's some capacity for the four shareholding governments to come together and to resolve this issue amicably and to fully restore the LIAT workers. And that has been the recommendation that we have made. Now, we have not reneged up to this point from the 50%.
If Barbados' 10% commitment remains unchanged, as has Antigua's 50%, the Prime Minister says it is unlikely Liet workers will receive 100% of their severance. He says the possibility of Dominica and St. Vincent and the Grenadines paying out the remaining 40% is improbable, since they only held about 20% of the Liet shares. In light of the current situation, Prime Minister Brown considers the Antigua and Barbuda Workers' Union stance to be politically motivated, lazy and cruel to the Liet workers. He argues the Workers' Union attitude has brought negotiations to a halt.
And their position is, unless you pay 100%, we're not engaging. If that is your position, then there's an impasse.
Yes.
And it makes no sense for us to speak to you.
Alicia Humphreys, ABS News.
The Belize Police Department has joined others that have decided to honor their female members during this Women's Month. The department recognized 62 women through promotions they have earned in their career as police officers.
These women being promoted today were from among the officers who sat the recent promotional exams and had gone through the promotional board interviews and were recommended for promotion. So all we did was to select the women from among that list, and we did the promotion today. Oftentimes we've heard managers, HODs speaking that they do appreciate women, but showing appreciation must be done by your conduct and not by words. In the department, we are serious about making sure that we show the world that we love and appreciate the women who work with us.
I know being a police officer, you must do your work 24 hours around the clock. However, whilst I am at work, I use two caps. I put on the work cap, and when I reaches home, I put on the home cap, which I have to act in the capacity of a mother to care for my family.
Well, I am a mother of 5 beautiful children, and I go to work every day and make sure I execute my duties to the best of my abilities. And when I go home, I take on my motherhood. Where I work, it's 4 of us, 3 males and myself, the queen of that department. So I am thankful to be in that department, and it's not as challenging as it seems because we all get together and we do what we need to do to get the work done.
I've been mostly doing analysis and intelligence for over those 15 years. I've begun as a daughter. I became a mother and a wife in the department. I'm currently in school, so it's been challenging to juggle both motherhood, being a spouse, work and school at the same time. But I've been taught at a young age to excel at everything that I do, so I try to excel at everything I do.
Okay.
So there's no question until to where I am.
How far do you want to reach?
As far as I can go. I don't want to stop. As long as they recognize my hard work, I'll accept it.
Women are competent people, in some cases even more competent than men. The encouragement today from Madam Speaker, who was the guest speaker, was for the officers, the female officers, to make sure that they continue to do their best, strive for excellence, and ensure that they break that proverbial glass ceiling of becoming the head of the police department. And I believe that one day we're going to see that happen. I don't want the men to feel like, oh, the commissioner is only promoting women and then forgetting us. So the promotion from male officers will be next week, and those deserving male officers are being promoted next week.
In news further afield, Russian President Vladimir Putin welcomes President Xi Jinping to Moscow for a state visit and says the pair will discuss Beijing's Ukraine peace proposal. According to reports, President Putin has allegedly told the Chinese leader that he has looked at China's proposals for resolution of the Ukraine conflict and he views them with respect. Speaking at informal talks at the start of Xi's state visit to Moscow, the Russian president reportedly also said Russia was, quote, slightly envious, end quote, of China's rapid development in recent decades. The visit represents President Xi Jinping's first state visit to Moscow since the Ukraine invasion. Both hailed their historic close ties as Russia faces international isolation. Al Jazeera has more.
This is a trip China hopes will end war in Ukraine, but it's a delicate mission for Chinese President Xi Jinping. Xi has repeatedly said his country is neutral in the conflict, but he is widely seen as a key ally and supporter of Russian President Vladimir Putin.
China values the friendship between China and Russia. This has historical logic because we are neighbours and two large countries. We're also strategic partners. Such a position determines that we have a very close relationship.
Last month, China presented a peace plan to end the war in Ukraine. But while it calls for an end to unilateral sanctions against Russia and a ceasefire, it makes no mention of Russian troops withdrawing from Ukrainian territory. President Vladimir Putin said Russia is open to a political and diplomatic solution.
We have considered your proposals for settlement of the Ukraine crisis. Of course, we will have an opportunity to discuss this. We know that you are basing this on principle of fairness and upholding the principle of the international law, indivisible security for all countries. You also know that we're always open to negotiations. We will discuss all these issues, including your initiative.
Following his trip to Moscow, President Xi Jinping is likely to speak with Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky for the first time since the start of the war. But Ukraine has rejected calls for a ceasefire while its territory is occupied by Russian forces. Beijing also faces another challenge, convincing Western leaders who remain largely skeptical of its peace plan.
He's clearly committed war crimes.
The United States said it was designed to deflect attention from China's support for Putin. Washington has recently disclosed intelligence that China was considering sending secret shipments of weapons to Russia. And if that happens, the US warns it may impose economic sanctions on Beijing.
In sports, the recent announcement of the return of the Issa Grace Kennedy Boys and Girls Athletics Championships this year, with its full schedule of events for the first time since COVID-19 pandemic impacted Jamaica and the world in 2020, has stirred the nation and generated eager expectation for the return of the over a century-old event. The event is set at a price tag of $130 million. In an interview on PBCJ Presents, President of the Inter-Secondary Schools Sports Association, Keith Wellington, gave some tips to other countries seeking to develop the results Jamaica has received on the world of athletics for the past 6 decades.
To start early, and you have to get as many persons as possible involved, even at a voluntary level, to ensure that you capture all the talents that are available and put them through a process where that talent can be honed and maximized.
Join us for more fulsome discussions on the return of champs this Friday, March 31, 2023 on PBCJ Presents at 5 p.m. Football fans can go online and show their support by voting for Reggae Boys goalkeeper Andre Blake and girls striker Khadijah Shaw. They've both been nominated for the CONCACAF 2022 Men's and Women's Player of the Year awards. Blake is coming off a 2022 club season where he was named MLS Goalkeeper of the Year for the 3rd time in his career. Bonnie Shaw had a great year in 2022. The football player helped the Reggae Girls to qualify for their 2nd consecutive Women's World Cup at the CONCACAF Women's Championships. She scored 3 goals and registered 1 assist, earning a spot on the tournament's best 11 team. Overseas, she scored 16 goals in all competitions last season for Manchester City and helped them to win the Continental Cup. Voting ends on April 13, with the majority being determined by coaches and captains of all the Confederation member nations. A small percentage of that vote will be based on fan responses. Fan voting is now open on cacaf.com/CONCACAF-awards. And that's the news on PBCJ. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. Pleasant viewing.